Hey, hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, friends. Right. So, first of all, my sincere apologies for the sessions that got cancelled in the past, 2, 3 days. Anyways, we'll, maintain the same pace and we'll understand the concepts. We'll continue where we have stopped and we'll understand the upcoming topics of SQL. Right. So, friends, we have completed the topic on SQL commands, and today we are going to understand SQL data types. Right. So, before we understand what is this, the concept of data types, we'll quickly recap what we have understood in the previous sessions, and then we'll take up our discussion. Right. Excuse me. So, what did we learn in the previous sessions? We have started the program on SQL, Structured Query Language, which is not a programming language and which is a query language where we understand how we are supposed to build the queries. Okay, so this SQL language is used to retrieve the data, or in order to do some kind of manipulations on the structured data, we are supposed to learn SQL. Previously, in the olden days, probably you go back to the 19th century, SQL is termed as SQL. So the abbreviation for SQL is Structured English Query Language. Okay, so this got reframed as SQL. So that English, whatever we have discussed. In SQL, the queries are similar to English language, and if one is comfortable in English, probably the understanding. Okay, so if you're good at English, yes, it will be very easy for you to understand the concepts of SQL. Only thing is you are supposed to memorize the syntaxes. Probably the syntaxes, yes. Excuse me. So we understood the basic introduction to SQL. Then we have also understood the first topic. It is commands. What are the different commands that we have understood under SQL, friends? I mean, what are the different commands that we have? Five different types of languages. The first one is DDL. DDL stands for Data Definition Language, right? Yes. So, what are the commands do we have under DDL? Under DDL, we have four commands. And what is the purpose of DDL? First of all, DDL helps us to define the structures of the objects. Okay, so it might be a database, it might be a table, or whatever it might be. Upon the object changes. So the commands that we have are create, then alter, truncate, and finally drop. So all of these, if you see, they are used for either creating or changing the structure. Okay, either you define the structure or you can change the structure. Okay, of the object. The DDL commands are used. Create command helps us to create the objects. It might be a database, a table, a view, whatnot, a user, everything. Okay, anything can be created using create command. Then coming to alter command, we are able to modify the structure. Okay, by creating a column by for the existing table, or by dropping a column for the existing table, by changing the data type for an existing column. Anything can be done using alter. So this is nothing but change, modify. Okay. Then we also have truncate. Truncate is actually, it is just removing uh, the logical structure, but the physical structure of the table will be as is. Okay. So that means the table, when you try to use this truncate command, all the records, all the data points that we have for a table will be removed, but the table will be as is. Okay, you can see. um, so friends, if you have missed my previous sessions, go and watch session number 2 and session number 3 as part of this playlist. Okay, so that you'll have some good amount of knowledge on what exactly are these languages, because when you try to skip these classes, so what happens is probably you may not cope up. So that is the reason, in case if you haven't watched the previous sessions, yes, do watch. They are available in our channel. And I'm just revising these topics here, but I'll not go to the depth, right? Yes. Then finally, drop command helps us to completely, you know drop or remove the table permanently. Okay, you can drop a table, you can drop a database, everything, any object in simple. Okay, so these are the commands that we have on the DDL. And the second language that we have discussed is DQL, data query language. What is the purpose of data query language? Is to fetch the data. To retrieve the data, we use DQL command, and the only command that we have under DQL is select. Okay, so select is a very important command because it is select command is used for fetching the data, for retrieving the data from the tables, from the databases, right? So select star, this asterisk mark is representing the entire data, but if you have any requirement that you are not supposed to fetch the entire data, but a few columns, then instead of this asterisk mark, replace with the column names. Okay, for which you are supposed to get the data, specify the column name so that you'll get the data for only the selected columns, right? Then next to DQL, we also discussed you know DML, data manipulation language. So friends, what is the purpose of DML? Why should someone learn DML commands? Excuse me. DML language commands helps us to manipulate the data. Okay, M stands for manipulation, data manipulation language. So this particular commands of DML helps us to manipulate the data. Okay, so what are the commands that we have under DML? The first one is insert, followed by update, then you know delete. So insert actually helps us to insert the data, okay, at the specific either you can specify the number of records. If you want to insert only one record, that is possible. If not, even if you try to insert n number of records, yes, even that is also accepted. But insert in general has two syntaxes. In the first one, probably you are supposed to mention all the column names, okay, followed by the values, okay, of the new row. If not, in the second one, we'll not mention the column names, we'll skip the column names, we'll directly mention only the values and we'll insert the records. So when is one preferred and when is two preferred is when you want to pass the values for all the columns, go with the second syntax. And if you want to pass only, or if you want to insert the values only for specified number of columns, you know we are supposed to go with syntax 1. So that makes the difference. Right. Then next to insert, we also have update. Update, the meaning, the general meaning is to update the values. So whenever you want to update the values present in the table, you're supposed to use update command. So how do we update the values is using clauses, especially the where clause. So using the where condition, we'll update the values present in a table. And finally delete. So delete command helps us to remove the records by specifying a condition. So again, we use clauses. Hold on, friends. We'll talk about or we'll understand the topic of clauses in the coming sessions. Okay. So for time being, you just assume that just have an understanding that update and delete uses some kind of conditions. Okay. uh, as part of the syntax, in update and delete commands we generally use some conditions. That's it. Right. So we can also delete the complete records from the table. Just you need not mention this condition. Don't mention the condition. Just keep it as delete from table. It will delete all the. It will remove all the rows. It will remove all the records from the table. Right. Next to DML, we also discussed DCL, data control language. Can we control the data? Yes. It's nothing but we control the privileges. We control the access. Okay, permissions. So all these actions can be performed using DCL commands, and the commands that we have under DCL are grant and revoke. Grant and revoke. Grant is like we grant the permission. Okay, we give permissions to the users. Okay, we give privileges to the users. It depends on the requirement. When you go and work in real world, not for each and every data you may not have the access for insert or for delete. No, you may just have only the access for select. What is the purpose of select? For fetching. That's it. So upon your project, upon the requirement, yes, you know, DBAs, they will, I have discussed this role in the last session. Database administrators, probably they'll grant the access upon the requirement. Probably again, okay, you'll also have the for required commands by specifying the command. So again, grant is like providing the access and revoke is taking back the access. Simple. Okay, right. Then we also discussed TCL, like how we are able to control the data. Okay, the similar way we can control the transactions. What are the transactions? Okay, transactions, friends. Transactions are nothing but uh, when you are trying to do any kind of operation on the database, okay, on a table, it becomes a transaction. Example, when you try to insert a record, a new record, right, it is a transaction. Okay, so all the transactions can be controlled using the commands of transaction control language. And what are the commands do we have under transaction control language are commit, then rollback, and finally save point. Commit, rollback, and save point. Commit command helps us to save the transactions permanently. Rollback command helps us to undo the transactions. We can roll back to the original stage. If you feel that something is going wrong, yes, you can go back to the original stage using rollback command. And save point helps us create some kind of points. See, for example, I'm creating or I'm doing n number of transactions, one over the other. Okay. So what happens is When you do first transaction, second transaction, or third transaction might be, you can create some kind of save points. Okay, in this way. So what exactly happens when you create save points using save point command? It helps us to roll back to that point instead of going back to the original stage. Okay, so even save point also helps us to roll back, but not to the original stage, but till some extent. Probably here, yes. Okay, so that makes the difference between rollback and save point commands. So all the topics we have discussed by taking an example in the previous sessions, and in case or by chance if you missed, I sincerely request you to go through the sessions, watch them, get some kind of understanding, because these five languages are very important: ddl, dql, dml, dcl, and tcl. Because as I have mentioned earlier, a fresher can expect some kind of questions in interviews as part of SQL. And SQL is one of the primary skill. Is it only for what kind of roles? For majority kind of roles, it might be a person who works for as a full stack developer, okay, or person who is going to work in the data related fields. Okay, data related roles. Yes, SQL will be a primary skill, and freshers you can expect a question from the languages. So it's better if you have a kind of good knowledge. If you have a clear understanding about these languages, you can rock, or you can nail the performance in interviews. Because the first when there is a famous quotation as well: the first impression is the best impression, right? So these languages are very important, and just go through these sessions, friends. Right. Now, in today's session, what exactly are we going to understand is, you know, the topic of data types. Because in the last session, when we are creating tables, I'm using different terminologies. Okay, and I have just mentioned it as integer or float or decimal, character, varchar. So I have used different terminologies, and I just mentioned that these are the data types. But what is a data type? Okay, what are the different types of data types that are available in SQL? Okay, how these change from different rdbms systems? Everything we are going to understand in today's class. Okay, so this will be more like theory class, friends. Instead of hands-on, I should say it will be a theory class, because we are comfortable in creating a table. Table can be created using create command. The syntax is create table, table name. Within the braces, I'm supposed to mention the column name, column name, then followed by the schema, data type, right? The data definition. So this data types we are going to understand in today's class, right? So more often it will be like a theory class. Probably don't lose your concentration, focus. We'll understand all the data types that are present in SQL and how these change between the relational databases. We'll also discuss. Excuse me. Okay. Um, then I'll take up your questions in the last. Right. So what is data type? Anyhow, it's clearly there on the screen. Okay, so data type. Okay, so if you observe this particular word properly, it is giving us the definition. Yes, what type of data is it representing? It is what representing. Yes. So data type is actually talking about the kind of data or the type of data that we are dealing. Okay. So to be stored in any of the tables. Okay. Because we have different types of data. Am I right? I'm not talking about structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. Excuse me. I'm not discussing the types of data. I'm especially discussing about structured data. So do not deviate. Okay. Within structured data, what are the different, you know, data available is what our topic today. Okay. So in general, you'll have numeric and non-numeric. Yes, probably. Okay, so in order to store numeric values, what kind of data type should be used? And in order to store non-numeric data, what kind of data type should be used is the actual topic for the day. Okay, so within a table, you'll have numeric data, we'll have non-numeric data, we'll have data related to time, we'll have data related to date. Yes, we can have any kind of data within a table. I'm talking only about structured data, friends. So do not violate. Focus only on structured. So structured data is the data in which we have the data in the form of tables. So tables, that is rows and columns. Okay. Additionally, structured data also have a predefined schema. What is this predefined schema? Predefined schema is nothing but data definition. Data definition. In the first column, what data should actually, should be part of the first column, should be defined upfront. It should be only numeric data or it should be non-numeric data. That particular part will be done using data type. Okay, so in SQL, we have numeric data types, then some non-numeric data types, and finally date related data types. Okay, so we'll understand one by one, because under each and every data types we have different or multiple data types, right? So focus. I'll talk about the first one. It is numeric data type. What is this numeric data type? So the data types which are used to store numeric values. So nothing but numbers. Yes. If I want to store any number, I'm supposed to use numeric data types. So Akhil, again, numbers, you mean, if I take number line. So I'm going back to our schooling stage. Minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay, somewhere in the middle I'll have 0. Right? Yes, this is how we represent the numbers on a line. Number line. Right? So all of these are numeric. Yes, they are numeric. So in as part of these numeric values, we will have integers. Then, we'll also have floating values, nothing but decimals. Can I get any? So, friends, before I actually, talk about the types, give me some examples for integers and decimals. Excuse me. Come on, friends. Give me some examples for integers, decimals. I don't think my question is complicated. Yes, got some. Uh, so within one response, I got both the values. Okay, fine. One is integer or decimal. Okay, good. So probably I'll keep it like this: one, two, three, so on, infinity. Are they integers? Yes, they are integers. No, if I go in the reverse direction, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, so on, minus infinity. Are they integers? Yes, they are integers. Okay, they are integers. Then what are the decimal values? Decimal values are nothing but, a value or an, numeric value which has floating values, floating point numbers. Okay, examples 3.3, 3.31, 3.414. So, minus 3.314. Everything, whatever I have discussed, okay? So, all of these will be part of decimals, right? So, we are going to understand if you have, if you want to store integer values, what data type should be used, and if I want to go and use decimal numbers in the columns, okay, what data type should be used, we are going to understand. So probably in majority of the cases we'll more focus on numeric data types. The reason is, in majority of the cases, okay, use cases or whatever it might be, we will generally focus more on numeric values compared to non-numeric data. Am I right? Yes. Now let us understand what are the different data types that helps us to store integers, and also that helps us to store decimals. That is nothing but floating point values. The first one that we have here is uh, it's tiny int. Okay, it's tiny int. What is this tiny int? Tiny int is a data type of SQL which is part of numeric data types, which helps us to store only integers. It helps us to store only integers. But what is the range of this tiny int? We have two different ranges, isn't it? Yes, this is bit, I'm going to the depth of the data types. So focus, friends. When you take SQL, I mean SQL data types, under SQL data types, we have understood, we are understanding the numeric data types. Especially in numeric data types, okay, we have the concept of signed and unsigned attributes. Okay, for all, I mean, you know, probably the data types which are going to store the integer values, you know, for these data types alone, you have the concept of signed and unsigned attributes. What exactly are these? You know, these are the same, they represent the same, okay, with respect to any data type under the integer category, okay. So it might be tiny int, it might be small int, it might be medium int, integer, big int, whatever it might be. All of these have two different attributes. One is signed, the other one is unsigned. Okay, signed attribute helps us to store negative and positive values, both. Whereas unsigned, it allows us to store only positive values. Okay, so if you see unsigned tiny int, It allows us to store between only this range, minus 128 to 127 is the range. If you go beyond it, can we store using tiny int? No. I mean, signed tiny int? No. Okay. Whereas if I want to store minus 1 using unsigned tiny int, can I? No. It is 0 to 255. Okay. So how are these ranges derived? I'll just give an explanation. Focus. Even though if you try to understand it, that is well enough. If not, ignore. Okay. So try to concentrate for the next 2-3 minutes probably. The storage size of tiny int is 1 byte. Okay. So 1 byte is generally nothing but 8 bits. Going back to the binary format, we represent the data in the bits, right? So 1 byte is the storage size of tiny int, and 1 byte is written as 8 bits, right? So in the binary format, what are the numbers you have? Only 0 and 1? Yes, only 0 and 1. We represent the data using 0 and 1, right? So this is represented as 2 to the power n, that is 8 bits. So 2 power 8 is 2 power 4 into 2 power 4. What is 2 power 4? 16. Again, 2 power 4 is 16. 16 multiplied by 16 is 256. Okay, so it allows us to store up to this range. When you try to sum up the values 0 till 255, it is nothing but 256 values. Yes, in the same way, when you break this 256 into half, okay, so even if you try to add these numbers, minus 1 to minus 128 is 128 digits, and 0 to 127 is 128. 128 plus 125, 128 is 256 again. Okay, so in that way, the range was fixed for signed and unsigned. Okay, even though if you don't memorize all these, that's okay, because no one will ask you questions regarding the sign, or no one is going to ask you about the range. No one, seriously, no one. Okay, even as part of your interviews, yes, you may not get questions, any kind of questions with respect to the ranges, but probably the types, then the sizes, yes. So what kind of data can be generally stored is any numeric data which is between this range can be used to store. Simple example, uh, for example, if in a class, if there are 100 students, okay, assuming all these 100 students have the ID numbers as 1 2 3 so on till 100, assume. Okay, if I go and use tiny int as the data type for storing the ID, that would make more efficient as per the storage. Why not other data type is, if you go and use other data type, it is occupying more storage. Okay, I'll talk about the other data types as well, but that makes the difference. With respect to the storage, tiny int, it takes very less storage, it occupies very, or it consumes very less storage, right? So that is the difference. And one more point that I would like to clear out here is, in general, excuse me, um, don't mind, I'm not keeping well, but somehow I'm trying to take the session, so don't mind, friends. So in general, when you know find this kind of queries, probably if you see here, age, can we have age greater than 500? No, impossible. Am I a human or something else, right? So nowadays it's impossible to have greater than probably 70 or 80, but somehow our ancestors have lived around 100 plus, right? So age, if you want to store the values of age, okay, probably tiny int makes sense, but will it be signed or unsigned? When you see only tiny int, the default will be signed, friends. The default will be signed. Explicitly, if you want to use unsigned tiny int, you are supposed to mention age unsigned tiny int. Okay, that makes the difference. If you don't mention, then it is by default signed. In all the cases, it is same. Not only in tiny int, I'm talking about all the cases, right? So this is a simple example. I'm creating a table to store age where we have the customers or the customer name followed by the age. Okay, so then age is captured using tiny int data type. Okay, the main reason is it cannot go beyond 100 nowadays. That's what I believe. So that is the reason I went with tiny int, and with respect to the size, it just occupies 1 byte. Okay, that is 8 bits, very small size. Akhil, if you go to the next type under integer, I can also use small int, can't I? Yes, because small int is again a type under numeric data types, which is uh, which is actually used to store integers only. Can I use also small int for age? Yes, you can, but the reason why I go with tiny int is, you see the space, I mean the size, it is 2 bytes. So 2 bytes, what do you say? Is it better to go and use 2 bytes a data type which consumes 2 bytes space, or is it better to go and use 1 byte space? Obviously, it would be tiny int. No one wants to make their DBs stored with the unwanted types. When you are selecting the data type, it should be more efficient. Okay, so that is the reason we go and use tiny int for age. Okay, so if you want to explicitly again go, can I also go and use temperature? Yes, temperature probably of India. Okay, in the coming 1 month, if I'm recording the temperatures for the coming 1 month, I can go and use tiny int. The reason is, it cannot go beyond minus 128 and beyond 127. So this would make more sense. So upon the requirement, you are supposed to select the right data type. If you understand one, the rest of all will be very easy. The only ranges will separate, friends. The next one is small int. So tiny int is a basic one, followed by small int, which is generally used to store integers. But if you see the range, how is the range derived? Go back to the size. Just remember the size. If you remember the size, the same formula. So it is 2 bytes. So 2 bytes, nothing but same. It is 16 bits. 1 byte is 8 bits, so 2 bytes will be obviously 16 bits. So 2 power 16. So you calculate. I'm not that much professional in doing advanced calculations because I'm not a computer, I'm not a robot. So multiply 256 with 256, you'll get 65,536. Okay, since I'm starting with 0, it will be 65,535. Yes. So I just use my common sense. I am able to get the number. Okay. So if you make it exactly half, and you can also get the range for signed. Okay. So the same process, the same concept. Only difference that you observe is, with respect to the size and the range. see, probably what am I using? Marks. Okay, so probably if you take here, uh, not exactly the marks related to the semesters and all. If you are actually gathering the marks with respect to any kind of entrance exam, okay, so then you can go into the small int because anyhow it will be beyond this range. Then we have medium int. It, if you see the size, it is occupying 3 bytes. Yes. Okay, so it is 3 bytes, the same process. Okay, so the range of medium int is this much signed and unsigned. Understood? But in general, this is what we use it in more integer. We generally use integer more, but integer occupies 4 bytes. When you are assigning integer for any of the column, it occupies 4 bytes. And make sure that the number should be between this range. So, when I was going through some kind of hands on, I had a previous experience of, you know, the same data type, integer. One of my student have used integer for storing phone number. Is it possible? Can I store a phone number using int data type? Come on, friends. Yes or no? Guys, can you hear me? Okay, my friend says yes. What about others? Can I? Isn't it? No. How can I create it? How can I assign integer? See, here comes the basic question. Phone number, how many digits you will have in phone number? That's what, see, when I take real-time examples, you can map it. How many digits can I have in a phone number? 10 digits. Am I right? Yes. So, in this 10 digits, you take any of the phone number, you know, what is the first number that what is the first number that it starts? Probably 9 series, or 7 series, 8 series, or 6 series. I'm talking about Indian contact numbers, friends. Okay, the numbers which are associated with our country, right? India. So now the question is, what is the range? Will it allow us to store a 10 digit number? Yes, it allows us to store a 10 digit number. But the question is, will it allow us to store a 10 digit number starting with 9? No. 7? No. 8? No. 6? No. But it allows us to store a number starting with a 10 digit number starting with 2, but till this range only. Okay, so that is the reason you cannot use integer to store phone numbers. Clear? Then what we are supposed to use? Simple. Go down. You see, big int. It is big int. See the size, how big it is. Might be because of this range, it is named as big int. So under integer, we have 5 different types. Tiny int, small int, medium int, big int. Okay, and my sincere request, don't memorize these ranges. Okay, never try to memorize these ranges. It will be a foolish thing, friends, because you cannot also expect a question. Okay, so better memorize the storage sizes. That would make sense, because with respect to data types, probably you can have a scenario based questions. See, like whatever I have explained so far, taking the phone number as an example. Okay, so that kind of questions can be expected. Okay, so you can also get the range using the size the same way that we have done. Yes, good question. My friend says long int. Even we also have long int, but what I am discussing is the data types that are related to MySQL. Okay, is you are actually discussing the data types that are related to only MySQL? Yes. Probably long int may also be used, but these are the generally used data types with respect to integers. Okay, so the data types and the ranges of the data types will generally vary between the systems, one RDBMS system to other RDBMS system. So I'll just give a small example. I'm talking about signed, unsigned, right? For all these data types. Yes. So these signed and unsigned attributes for the integer data types are allowed only in MySQL and Maria. So it's again a database that is widely used in the real world. Again, it's an RDBMS system. Okay, similar to MySQL, but the UI changes. Okay, so the user interface might change, but SQL is constant. The language is constant here and there. Okay, so why am I talking about this topic is the signed and unsigned attributes of integer data type are allowed only in MySQL and Maria. Okay, what about Oracle? No. What about Postgres? No. Isn't it? Yes. You also go and check. Okay, so these signed and unsigned attributes of the integer data types, it does not support in other relational database management systems apart from MySQL and Maria. Okay, so no, there are n number of data types that if I go on, because it supports many. When the tool changes, obviously there might be a new data type added here. Okay, and that data type may not support in the previous one. I hope you are getting my point. Okay, I'm trying to communicate a simple point with respect to data types. Just understand its purpose enough. Don't focus on the ranges, because probably you may use MySQL as part of your graduation. Okay, but when you work in real time, you may use Postgres. Who knows, right? It would not make sense, right? So that is the main thing that I want to communicate with respect to the data types. And I take the discussion forward by explaining few more topics. It's the next one is decimal. Okay, so under numeric we also have decimal, float, double. Are these types processor dependent? uh, you're talking about which processor, friend? Did not get you clear, but try to keep it clear. I'll answer your question. Okay, so we also have decimal, float, and double as part of numeric data types, but these three types helps us to store floating point values, decimal values. Okay, so what is the difference is decimal data type helps us to store fixed point numbers. Okay, if there are fixed values for the decimals, you go and better use decimal. If not, if they are changing, if the precision is not that much clear, Okay, then go and use float data type. Okay, you can also go and use double upon the precision value, the decimals that you are going to keep. If they are more in number, okay, go and use double. If you see the storage size, it is 4 bytes for float, and for double it is 8 bytes. Okay, so upon the requirement, upon the right, the number of decimals that we can have for the column, okay, select the right data type. Done. So this is the basic understanding of data types for numeric values. Okay, so we understood the data types with respect to numeric categories. In the same way, we also have for non-numeric categories. Okay, so nothing but character data types. We have char, varchar. So these are the two generally used, most widely used data types under character data types or string data types. Okay, so what makes the difference is character data types helps us to store fixed length data. Okay, if you have fixed length values to store as part of your non-numeric column, go and use char, and the range of the characters will be only 0 to 255 characters, and from here onwards you'll not have the concept of signed unsigned. Okay, so it's just only the basic range. But this is important. The range of character is 0 to 255 characters. Okay, if you have any value beyond this range, go and use varchar. And the main difference between char and varchar is char is for fixed length, values, fixed length strings, fixed length non-numeric values. But varchar is for variable length values, variable length strings. Okay, if you see here, uh, in order to store IT department in a column, department column, okay, I'm using char as the data type. Okay, I'm going with character data type. You see how many places I'm going to fix. You're also supposed to mention the size. Okay, so you're supposed to mention the sites. So I have gone with 5. So this is how it gets stored. IT followed by 3 spaces. The length will be fixed for each and every value as part of this column. But here under varchar, it changes depending upon the value. So that is the reason it is named as variable length uh, character. It is not fixed. Okay, so that makes the difference. Character, varchar, variable character. Okay, we also have text. If you have beyond this range of varchar, you can go with text. Again, under text we have different types: tiny text, text, medium text, long text. For each and every uh, the type, we have the range. Maximum 255 characters allowed under tiny text. Then for text we have for 65,535 characters. Okay, and we also have the size next to it. So medium text, long text. Okay, if I want to store say a paragraph which has 1 lakh characters, so probably I cannot go and use something else, so I should go with text, right? So upon the requirement, you are supposed to select the data type. So that is one thing, you just concentrate. Enough, don't focus on the range. Okay, so next to non-numeric data types, we have date and time related data types. Okay, so what is this date and time? If I want to store the data which is related to date, and MySQL, as we are learning MySQL as part of this course, I'm just confining to MySQL only, because that is widely used in the current world, in the current industry. The format is fixed. It stores the data as part of the same format. Year followed by month followed by date. Okay, if you would like to store any of the date between this range, go and use date data type. Date data type. What is the size? 3 bytes. Okay, in the same way, if you would like to store date and time together, it uses the same format. Date, month, I mean year, month, date, followed by hour, minute, seconds. Okay, and we have the range, right? We also have the range. So this range, between this range, it allows us to store all the values. If you are crossing the limit, if you are crossing the exceeding the range, probably you'll get a error message stating that this particular data type is not supported. Okay, in the same way, we also have timestamp similar to date, but what is the difference? If you see the range is completely different. Either you use date and time, date time or timestamp. The format is same, but the range is different. Okay, so this is of very less range, probably 2038. So very less range that we are seeing here. So it's better if you go and use date time. Store your any of the data which is related to date and time values. What if you would like to store only time? Is there any data type? Yes, we also have a data type. It stores only time. It is time. Okay, and the format is hour, minute, seconds. So the time. Then the storage, and finally the year. You can also store only year between this range using year data type. That's it. So these are the generally used, or probably some of the data types we may not use as part of this program, but in real time, yes, rarely used. Upon the requirement, upon the data, we are going to select the data type. But it's better to have a minimal understanding about the data types. We also have two other data types which does not fall under the above categories, that is byte, bit and boolean. So the bit data type helps us to store the boolean values. My bad. The bit data type helps us to store binary data. Okay, zeros, ones. So if you have any of the binary data to be stored, you go and use bit. Bit data type should be used, and you should also specify the size. Okay, then if you want to store only boolean values, yes, we have boolean data type which allows us to store true or false, right? So more often it's like more theory part, because data types is all about understanding the types of the kinds of you know data that we have in the real world and how it is actually stored. Which data type would make more sense for the column? Okay, so all these questions should come into the mind before we create a table, because it is not semi-structured data that we are working on. Excuse me. We are working on structured data, and for structured data it is mandatory that we are supposed to pass the data type, that is the schema, upfront. Column followed by data type, column followed by the data type should be defined upfront. Okay, so choosing the right data type will actually affects your storage and your process as well. When you try to retrieve large amount of data, probably we may not experience as part of this program, but in real world, in the industry, you'll experience all the kind of things that we are discussing now. When you work on large data, millions of records, yes, all these come into the picture. And Moreover, the creating the table parts and creating the structure for the table and storing the data, everything will be done by DBAs in general. We may not do it until unless if you are hired or if you are occupied with the role of DBA. Okay, a database administrator will look into all these things, but we should have a minimal understanding of what exactly are the types. Right. I'll stop the discussion here because I hope we had a good session today. We have understood you know, the concept of data types. So yes, over to you. Any kind of technical questions? I'm ready to answer your questions. And did I miss anything? No. Yes. Thank you for your feedback, friends. One suggestion, you know, try to do more hands-on. Okay, whatever might be the topic, uh, just install the tool, complete the installation, and start working or start practicing. Okay, it should not like be. It should not like be like a normal class. You know, start doing hands-on. Right. So, any other questions? Thank you so much for the feedback. And moreover, one thing that I would like to communicate is so soon we are going to start sessions on machine learning and you know uh, deep learning, followed by NLP, then computer vision, as well as we are going to start sessions on generative AI as well. So friends, also communicate the same to your well wishers or your friends, your relatives, whomever you are aware of. Ask them to join these sessions, the upcoming programs. Yes. So once if you are done with the SQL, we'll start those sessions one by one. Right. So only thing is you are supposed to give some kind of support. That's it. Apart from it, nothing. Right, the feedback link has been shared. Before you leave, I request all of you to share this particular ongoing program with your connections, and also if you feel that this session is great, if it is actually informative, I would like to ask you to hit on the like button and ask some kind of questions in the comment section, and also subscribe to our channel, friends. Right. So the feedback link has been provided. So before you leave, give your valuable feedback. That's all for the day. The coming session we'll discuss few more topics related to SQL. Until then, take care. Have a great day. See you. Bye.